Okay, Stephen, you can call the meeting to order.
All righty. I call this meeting to order of May 6th, 2020. We get a roll call, please.
Okay, Commissioner Harrington?
Here.
Commissioner Kroc?
Here.
Commissioner Wade?
Here.
Commissioner Mekachek?
Here.
Chairperson White?
Here.
Just to note, all commissioners are present.
And are there any orders of the day, Jeannie?
No, everything is as presented in the agenda.
And then this is an opportunity for public comment. I don't know if anybody submitted any sheets indicating a desire to speak on any subject that is not on our agenda tonight.
I didn't receive anything from anybody to speak on items other than what may be on the agenda.
Okay. And fellow chairperson or commissioners, do you have, everyone had an opportunity to review the minutes? And anybody want to entertain a motion to approve those?
I reviewed the minutes and I would like to propose that we adopt the minutes as written.
A second.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Passes unanimously. Let's get to our public hearing section then. And Jeannie, if you'll introduce the 15979 Rose Avenue project, I'd appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. So what you have before you is a site development permit to take an existing approximate 1,000 square foot home and add a little over 2,000 square feet to it, inclusive of a 403 square foot attached garage. On the site, there is an existing detached garage, which will be demolished as part of the proposal. And it does include the removal of 3 palm trees. However, those trees are not needed for your review and approval because they're identified as undesirable trees per our code. So although we identified them as in the hearing notice, they don't need your approval. And so if you go to the site plan, you can see this is that kind of little odd lot at the beginning of Rose Avenue and Berry Lane. And, you know, I went through and looked at stuff, and the front setback is actually that narrow part of the lot. So if there were any questions relative to that, we had gone through a lot of research on this to establish the front setback, the side corner, which is along Berry Lane, and then the rear and the side interior. And then if you go to the end of your plan set, you'll see that, you know, currently it's a pretty insignificant little home, and there was a historic report done because it's over 60 years old, but there was no significance found vis-a-vis architecture or historic significance. So it is exempt from CEQA relative to that. But again, it's kind of a single story, you know, farm style home, which in that neighborhood will fit very nicely and I think be a really good addition to the neighborhood. And with that, I'm available for any questions. Do any of you have any questions of me?
I have a question, Jeannie.
Uh-huh.
On Streetscape, it shows one at the very last page. It shows 15975 Rose Avenue and 15956 Berry Lane.
15936 Berry Lane. That's if you continue down Berry Lane, that's the only house that it's near. So it's kind of an awkward street layout.
So even though the address is Rose Avenue, it's the okay,
correct.
Got it.
Because again, that front property line, you know, Rose Avenue then curves kind of to your right, and Berry Lane takes off.
Mhm.
It's really odd, but yeah, so Berry Lane is, if you were to continue down, it's the only other street that's there, because the big church that's actually in Los Gatos is behind
Oh,
this site, up the
Okay.
hill. Yeah. Any other questions? So we do have the applicant present, so I'm gonna, we're gonna unmute her. And then Stephen, if you want to say that, do your normal spiel.
Here's my normal spiel.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hi,
Opening the public hearing.
and who are we speaking with?
Oh, my name's Patty Bush, and my husband, John Bush, and our designer, Jan Corey, are with me.
Great. Thank you guys for attending, and I'm sorry that we were a little delayed getting started tonight. Appreciate
No
it. I don't have any particular questions about this project, but this is an opportunity for you to share with us anything about the project that you think would be important for the commission to hear, and also an opportunity for commissioners to ask questions if they may have them. Is there anything that you want to first present to the commission by way of your project before I entertain any questions from the commissioners?
I don't think so. I think Jeannie did a great job describing everything and what the objectives are for us. And, we're just really happy to be part of the community here at Monte Sereno, and we love our neighborhood and just could not be happier. We're just really excited to get started.
Thank you. Thank you. No, it's a good looking project. Definitely an improvement to what lies there now. Does anybody have any questions for the applicant at all?
I've got 3 disclosures. Can you hear me?
I can hear
Yes.
you. Yeah.
First disclosure is that I met Patty at the counter in Monte Sereno, and we
Yes.
had a brief conversation. Relating to my second disclosure, my son and daughter both went to Tilly's preschool, their daycare there. So
Yeah.
my third disclosure is I went there this afternoon and reviewed the property and was just overwhelmed by the memories that I had. And those memories were all good.
Wow.
I did look at the property, and I'm so impressed with what they're doing there. And I looked at the views and I looked at the neighborhood, and we can talk about that in findings, but I was very impressed.
Thank
you,
you.
Brian.
That's awesome. I remember very vividly, and I don't know if you know this, but Tony passed away. In case you
Yes.
didn't know that. Okay.
Heather, Jennifer, Steve, any questions for our applicant?
No, I met one of the neighbors when I was out there, Sue Garner, and she said she's all for it. So
Good.
yeah, I mean, no comments other than I think this is an outstanding improvement on that corner there. So nothing from me.
Okay, so if there's nothing more, then we're going to close the public hearing and discuss this amongst the commissioners, and somebody will bring a motion and we'll shortly have a decision for you. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is Jeannie. Just to let you know, Sue Garner, a resident in the area, did submit a comment that she's in support of the project.
Okay. Does
Nice.
Sue want to speak tonight, or just let Sue?
In the setup that we have, we pass those comments on verbally. We don't
Okay.
bring the attendees in verbally.
Okay. Well, thank you, Sue.
I believe Sue could send a message. I think she's already done so, perhaps.
We've said it verbally, so you have the fact that staff has offered her support, and we indicated to her that we would.
And
It's in the comments on the left of the screen, too.
We waited on you, and now you're telling us how we should be looking at the screen.
we don't have that. I don't have that, but I talked.
Maybe that's the problem.
All right. I'm going to close the public comment and give us an opportunity to talk about this project, if that's all right with everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Thank you. What do you guys think?
I think it's great. I think it's beautiful.
No brainer as far as I'm concerned.
I think it's fine being that the address, unless the address was changed in any way from Barry to Rose. If it makes sense if it's a Rose address that they would be able to call that the front setback, because I was concerned on whether it should be a variance or not. But I'm in support of it.
No, it's the way that the Rose Avenue address definitely grants them significantly more area to improve on.
Well,
by virtue of
just to let you know, front, side, and setbacks aren't determined by address. It was really the lot configuration. Because
Okay.
again, if you were to take the Berry Avenue frontage and call that the front, your rear is always directly opposite your front,
Mhm.
and that would not afford it any building envelope. So
Yep.
again, it's really the lot configuration and how it is set, how it's, you know, its dimensions, which helps to identify what's the front, side, rear, and whatnot. They can come in if they want at a later date to request an address change, and we would look at it and work with the emergency response agencies to see whether or not that makes sense to them. Because again, addresses really are about public safety and mail delivery. So that could be an option for them in the future if they wanted to do that. But that would be an applicant request to do that, property owner request. So.
All right. Does anybody want to make a motion to approve this project?
I
I'll
move.
make- oh,
I move that we approve this project as submitted.
Thanks, Steve. A second. Thank you, Brian. All those in favor say aye.
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 Congratulations with your project. It's going to be a beautiful addition to the town. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Now do we go back on mute, right?
You go on mute, please, and you can hang out or you can leave the meeting. It's up to you. Unmute me.
Jeannie,
Okay,
let me
you
know
can
when you're
start.
ready to move on.
You can start the next item.
Okay.
You can move on.
So the next item on our agenda tonight is a proposed ordinance modifying fence heights, and we all received in our packet a chart of some of the materials that were shared with the city council, who, as I understand it, Jeannie, and correct me if I'm wrong, the city council has already voted favorably for this. Is that correct?
Voted on it at all. This is coming back per a direction of theirs.
Okay.
So that there's been no action on it per se.
Okay. I misread that then. But it is if I understand it correctly, it's an across the board increase from fence height of 6 feet to 7 feet for side and rear. Is that correct?
Let me recognize Commissioner Mekachek. I think he might have something to say.
Oh, sorry.
yes, thank you. I believe that I have to recuse myself from this discussion because I was one of the ones that brought this to council and asked them to consider aligning the ordinance in Monte Sereno with Los Gatos. And then Jeannie did a staff report, and I supported that staff report. So I corresponded with Jeannie, and she agreed that I should probably recuse myself.
Okay. Thank you,
Okay.
Brian.
Jeannie, should I log off?
Yes, because there's not going to be anything after this.
Except that when we talk about you.
Oh,
That's
well,
at the very end, though. Bye, Brian. Have a great night.
This is a good thing because it's my 24th wedding anniversary and dinner starts in a few minutes.
Oh, yeah,
Congratulations.
congratulations.
Congrats.
Hey, thanks. Bye.
See you, Brian.
Let's do that.
Okay, so Yeah, this was a request brought by a resident at the time to look at modifying the fence height and see what opportunity there may be to increase it based on what other communities did in surrounding Monte Sereno. In the staff report, you will see at the end there's a little matrix, but generally, fence heights were anywhere from 6 to 7 feet, and uh, the council looked at all the information and they did direct staff to come back with an ordinance, basically upping the allowable fence height along the side and the rear of the residential properties up to 7 feet. They're not requiring that last foot be of any sort of design or lattice, but they did want staff to, at a later date, when we put out some information on the fencing regulations, to educate them on the opportunities to have, maybe some open lattice type design for that upper 1 foot, that last foot. They thought, some thought it would be aesthetically pleasing. The one thing that I wanted to point out, there is an exception that's proposed in here to allow fence height to go up to 8 feet, because there are some areas in the city that abut residential properties in the county, and the county's fence height regulations for their properties are 8 feet. That, again, since it's a common property line, in those instances, the fencing can be 8 feet. And also if you're adjacent to commercial, which really is 1 or 2 properties, not that many properties that are in the city that would qualify for that commercial exception. But that's pretty much it in a nutshell, going from 6 to 7 feet, with the exception if you're adjacent to a county residential property, you can go up to 8. It still requires keeps it down to 3 feet within the front setback area. So with that, I'm available for any questions.
I have a question. Since we modified the height when it's next to the county property to be consistent, since we have so much adjacent to Los Gatos, shouldn't we have, as long as, if we're going to raise it to 7 feet, shouldn't it just be the same 6 feet with 1 foot of lattice? Because which precedence if you're building a fence between Los Gatos and Monte Sereno?
We'd have to get an interpretation, but it could go either way.
Yeah, I mean, it just seems like, since we're,
it's tricky when you say, well, if you're this sort of property, you have to build it this way. If you're this sort of property, you have to build it this way. We didn't really want to get into the design prescription of it, because, the whole lattice thing was really 25% opaqueness and stuff. It wasn't just lattice. It was like it had to have some openness, a percentage openness. And, all of this fencing is going to go up without any permits. So, we're really don't want to get in to having to enforce things like that. You bring up a good question. I mean, I think, in the case of similar to the exception that allows up to 8, that would be a less restrictive. If we were to go, some might call if you're adjacent to a property in Los Gatos, you're restricted more. It's a different kind of direction to go in.
Yeah,
So,
it just seems like that's begging the, neighbors arguing over, are we supposed to have the opaque, certain percentage of opaqueness, or can it have a full fence? It just seems like we might as well, since we have so much adjoining property, if they've got that, it just seems to me that it would just be easier all the way around on everyone, just to have the same requirement.
Well, again, that's assuming somebody puts their fence on the property line. You don't have to put your fence on the property line. If they put it 6 inches in, they could have 7 feet solid. So again, you know, that's if it's put on the property line. I think you bring up a good point. I will have the attorney address that before we go to council, but right now, I don't know if one trumps the other. It could be, if it is a good neighbor fence on the property line, it could be either or. But if it's within the Monte Sereno, if they didn't want to do lattice, all they have to do is move it in 6 inches and they can do a solid fencing. So it's not going to force somebody to do that. But I think you bring up a good question that I'm going to have, because I kind of remember when we dealt with the 8-foot exception, they pretty much said, well, since it is less restrictive, let's just include it as an exception so that there's no question about it. Whether, again, adjacent to a jurisdiction which has a different regulation, I'm not going to necessarily say it's more restrictive, but if you have a fence on property line, it may be that they could, I don't know.
Yeah,
I think we have to have the attorneys answer that. And based on their response, I think staff will make any modifications that we need to from a legal standpoint. See what I'm saying? I mean, if let's say if the legal interpretation is, well, they could go with the least restrictive, then we don't have to do anything to the proposal. But I think when I write the staff report, so maybe the question is, should the commission think that if you are adjacent to a property in Los Gatos, since Los Gatos, do they always require that 1 foot of lattice in all cases? Let's see. And it's just 6 feet in the hillside.
So I live next to someone who lives on Los Gatos, and they built a new fence when they built their house, and they have the lettuce. I end up having an 8-foot tall fence because of a retaining wall, which I think is awesome. But what I'm concerned about with limiting it to lattice is, let's say you want to build a modern-ish home, which is kind of the trend right now, and you just want a simple fence like the one on Andrews in Montgomery, where it's just a simple, I think they don't have lattice on theirs, but let's say you don't want lattice as part of your aesthetic. I think that should be an option. That's my choice. Hey, Jeannie, one more thing. I think that my computer says I'm being controlled by administrator. Can you see if you can turn it on your end on my camera?
Your camera?
Yeah. Is it a setting that you have me on that I'm like the public?
No, I think it's controlling your cameras on your end. We're not.
Yeah. But when I press on it, it doesn't do it.
No.
I select it and it just doesn't do it. All right.
We'll have to figure that out.
Okay, so I'm confused. So it's not actually, it says lattice on here, but what you're saying is it's not actually, it does not mean lattice, like we think of lattice.
Well, there's a lot of different types of lattice. One can be a crosshatch.
Well, this is just speaking to Heather's concern that if you don't want you wanted a more streamlined look to your fence. And
there were council members who liked the look of that top foot being some sort of open design, whether it be a vertical type lattice or a crosshatch type lattice. a thick earthen or whatever. From staff's standpoint, that's basically dictating design in a fence for something that is not going to get a permit, and not everybody views lattice in the same light as others. I threw in that, because some thought, well, it's 7 feet tall now. That's pretty tall. It'd be nice to have something open at that foot. And I said, I live in a community where it's 7-foot high fences, and quite honestly, I have 7 feet on one property line and 6 on the other, and there's not a real discernible difference. So when you get above 7 feet, then you're starting to get more of a wall type thing. But I think from a design standpoint, staff did, and you'll see it in the staff report, when we put out the literature on the fence regulations, we will help property owners understand that there are some design alternatives, and probably put some, illustrative examples in there of what they could use, but it's not a requirement. So.
Okay, that's fine. If everybody thinks that that's fine, that's fine with me. I was just looking for ease of, like, I'm just thinking of neighbors arguing over if they're going to have a lattice, have an open space or not. But
well, I think what I will do, like I said, your question is a good question. So I will discuss that with the attorneys and get their interpretation of that, and whatever it is will probably make its way into the staff report.
Okay.
As to how, in those instances, if a fence does go on property line, which regulations could they use, or are they bound by the more restrictive, which would be, most people would think would be the lattice. I don't know, but okay. I'll work with that. I'll put our whatever comes of that discussion in the staff report to council, and then if given that interpretation, we feel that there needs to be some changes to the proposed regulations, we'll probably suggest those.
Okay.
So, Jeannie, are we to have a discussion amongst ourselves, and then somebody makes a motion to approve the proposed modifications to the code?
Again, what you're doing is you're voting on a recommendation to the city council on what's been basically put forth by staff, which is an increase in the fence height up to 7 feet, with the 2 exceptions of when you're adjacent to a county property. It makes sense to allow it to go up to 8, since the county allows 8. And then if you're also adjacent to have a shared property line with a commercial property.
Okay. Well, commissioners, what are your thoughts on this? Let's start with you, Jen, because you're on my far left of my screen.
Well, all I have to say is what I said. I just thought it would be easy. I was not really considering what the fence would actually look like. I was more thinking of ease of integrating Los Gatos and Monte Sereno borders. So if it's not really that big a deal, then I'm fine with it as it is. It's as long, yeah,
Okay, thanks. Steve?
I don't have a problem with the 7 foot, especially with, all these ADUs being crammed onto these properties that are really close to the property line. I think the 7 foot's going to allow a little bit more privacy. And as far as, matching up with Los Gatos, as far as the 1 foot lattice, the lattice, I think, kind of assumes it's a wood fence, right? I mean, what if it's a CMU fence or a brick fence or something? Do you put lattice?
All of which are encompassed in the statute,
but I do think Jennifer brings up a good point, and it should be addressed somehow, not sure how, because I do see maybe that it could be a potential issue. You know, you're up against a Los Gatos neighbor. I have 3 Los Gatos neighbors sharing my property line, and
Well, you barely made it into this
I
committee.
know, there's just like this little key that grabs my lot, man. I mean,
The hanging chad. It was a very close vote.
yes. I do see it could be a potential issue. So I do think it should be addressed in some fashion. And then
Thanks.
what's this pedestrian gateway 12 feet tall? What is that all about?
That's all. That's always been in there. And about a year or so ago, that went from 10 to 12 feet. That's if you have if you have a front low-lying fence and you have a little gate that goes for a walkway, or you have a walkway,
Oh,
you can have basically an arbor over that walkway. You know, a little trellis or something.
Over the gate portion of it.
Yeah. Whether
Yeah.
you have a gate or not, you can have that taller.
Oh, okay. I thought it
yeah.
meant if you were up against a pedestrian way.
No.
Oh, okay, got it.
You could basically have this entry arbor over your pedestrian walk at that fence area.
Got it. Okay.
Thank you. Heather, any comments on this proposed ordinance?
I agree with everything Steve and Jennifer have said. I'm all for making the fence higher. I would go to 8 feet even. I don't think, especially to Steve's point with the ADUs being 4 feet from fence lines, rear fence property lines, I think a fence makes a better neighbor. And I am a fan of an 8-foot tall fence, but they're not really asking us for that. But that's just my opinion. So as presented, I'm okay with the 7 feet with no lattice.
Yeah, I agree with all the comments, and I thought Jen's concern is a viable one. I also think, Jeannie, when you pass this on, because we'll entertain a motion in a moment, but I think that I would also agree with the comments related to 8-foot heights, that the city council should even consider going higher if possible. In any event, does anybody want to make a motion to recommend that the amendments to sections 10.06130 and 10.08.040 as presented to us be recommended to the council for adoption?
Sure.
I would recommend that it be, I would say that I would recommend that it be presented with the caveats that we just talked about.
With the 2 concerns, yeah.
With the concerns, yeah.
Yeah, I'd second that motion. All those in favor?
Sorry. I hear the one concern about making sure when you've got the juxtaposition of a lot in Monte Sereno and Los Gatos and the difference between the lattice versus no lattice. It was the 8-foot height?
Yeah, that the city may even consider going higher than 7 feet.
So as a commission, you feel that going up to 8 feet is worth consideration?
Yes.
Okay.
And I think the argument regarding the proximity to ADUs, to fence lines and lot boundaries is the reason in support of that.
So then really, let me just, so you really want to recommend that they propose 8-foot height?
No.
I don't want to put words in your mouth.
I would endorse that. That's not before me though. That's why I think that's all we can do is make a recommendation.
No, what you can do is you could say, we reviewed it, and what we would recommend is that you're for an increase in the fence height. However, as a commission, and understanding how development, can happen on these lots, that you would recommend an even higher height. Yeah, that's very much in your the ability. You just don't have to say we like it or we don't. We can say, okay, we see what we are proposing as a commission. We feel 8 feet is worth considering, if that's the full commission. or whatever the motion
And do you
is.
feel that way? I think I heard that from Steve and Heather and myself, but I don't know if you had shared that opinion.
I don't share that opinion, but I would
Okay.
be the minority vote here, so it doesn't matter.
Well, and I wasn't thinking of going to 8 feet either, to be honest. 7 feet for sure. I think at 8 feet can be a little wallish. But there may be conditions where 8 feet would be okay. And maybe we go to 7 feet with the option of going to 8 feet with site architecture review, something like that. I think if everybody just goes out and starts building 8-foot fences, I think that's getting a little tall, especially if there's no lattice or opaqueness to the upper few feet.
Jeannie, is this ordinance read that way that Steve just described, namely that if somebody wanted to go above 7 feet, they would come to site and architecture for a permit?
No, because again, right now the only time somebody can go above the allowed height in any area is if you want to go above the 3 feet within your front setback. And that's probably, easy for, I think, a decision-making body to manage, because there's some conditions that are, in a lot of instances, unique to some properties and not unique to others. If you just give a blanket ability for, if you want to go above 7, you can go above 8. If you come to us, what are going to be your performance standards that allow, you would say, okay, you can go because you got an ADU. Well, an ADU can be built on every property now, quite honestly.
Right.
So again, I don't want you to think that in doing that, you can either codify the exception, or if they have to come to you for an increase in that height, you have to really identify what findings need to be made. And a lot of times the findings, if they can be made for all the properties, then you just blanket, go up to that height.
Right.
Does that make sense, what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It does. I mean,
Yeah.
it means that we're unprepared tonight to even entertain. I think.
I'm very fine with the 7 feet.
Okay. All right. So your motion, as I believe it was stated, now we'll withdraw the second concern and just articulate the first regarding fences that fall on boundaries between the cities.
Yeah.
And has anybody entertained a second to that motion?
So the motion is to recommend approval for the 7 feet with the 8-foot.
No, with the staff looking at the ramifications of the borderline property.
Oh, with Los Gatos, right, okay.
Does that make sense to everybody?
Yeah.
You understand what we're voting on? Okay.
Yeah, we're basically sticking to what is proposed in the draft ordinance here, with the only caveat that it be explored further in terms of how we deal with the common property lines between Los Gatos and Monte Sereno.
Exactly.
Yeah, I would second that.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. So that passes. Let's see. Anything else for us to consider tonight, Jeannie?
No, that is all.
Okay. Everybody well? Everybody healthy?
I have yet to get anything in for the June 2nd or 3rd meeting. I was expecting one application in, and I'll follow up with that property owner. As we're looking forward, these are items that had come before you previously. The appeal for 16005 Greenwood Lane, we're hoping to take to the City Council on June 2nd. It may very well be a remote meeting, but we have to get these things to hearing because there are timelines that we have to adhere to. And then the 3-lot subdivision over here on Saratoga Sunnyvale Road, tentatively scheduling that for May 19th. Because again, there's timelines in the Subdivision Map Act, and none of those have been waived by the governor, so we have to move forward with those. And you know, all the communities are holding their council meetings and commission meetings now remotely, so it still allows for the due process to happen.
Okay, is the subdivision, is that the same guy or is somebody new?
It's a new owner, but it's the same project. They just acquired it, so it's not a new application. It's the same plan, but the new owner is not proposing any homes at this time, and they're not bound to, because it's just a land division. So that stuff we did have to recirculate the environmental, which we didn't get any additional comments. And hopefully we can move that one forward.
I forget, did we move, I'm sure it's on my calendar. Did we move the July from
July, it was moved to July 8th.
July 8th, yes, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do have that.
So, and again, who knows what will be coming in. We can take applications in, and staff is reviewing them and processing them. So I've had discussions with a few people, so I think now that things are kind of settling out, more people are working out there on their designs and their plans, and we may see more applications in through the summer.
What was the dispensation of our meeting last time where we went over the council's proposed changes to the site and architecture? What's happening with that?
That hasn't
done anything yet?
gone any further.
They passed part of it, did they not, Jeannie?
The ordinance that basically put you guys in as a recommending body on all use permits, all subdivisions, all general plan changes, all zoning changes, that went into effect. You're not going to see a whole lot come from that because you guys don't do much of that now anyway. So you've basically now become a recommending body. Like when you guys, or if the city sees any general plan, changes, proposals, you would be a recommending body. But again, you're not going to see that stuff until the city goes through and updates their general plan. And you're not going to see any rezonings because your current zoning is in compliance with your general plan, land use transportation diagram. So unless that changes, you're not going to get a rezoning. We don't see that many use permits, grading use permits, but those are usually coupled with a site development permit. So you already see those and recommend to the council. Same thing with variances. Most of them are coupled with a site development permit. So I don't expect that to increase your workload much at all, but it did get adopted.
Okay.
So
Thank
And it's probably will go into effect. I think it got adopted in where were we? At their second April meeting. It was on consent or something. So it'll go into effect end of May, beginning of June.
Super. Thank you.
What was the document that Steve put forth? Was that forwarded to them, or where does that sit?
That hasn't, I haven't gotten the final one from you, and that hasn't come back to council. Did you finalize that letter?
You're muted, Steve.
Yeah, you need to unmute.
Sorry. I don't know where I left that. I think I was waiting for final comments from folks, but I think I heard from most people. And then
Yeah, I think you did.
I was contacted by councilperson LeBouvier, and he wanted to meet with me because he listened to the recording, and he wanted to meet with me before I drafted a letter. And we were set to meet, and I think Heather May was going to join us, and Rowena Turner wanted to go. And I think it was the very night that the shelter-in-place order was imposed, or the one right after, or something like that. And obviously, we never met.
Mm-hmm.
And so, am I understanding correctly that the very issues that we were addressing were already passed by the council, so there's no need for that letter now?
No, the only thing that they passed was
The broadening. Okay. Yeah.
the broadening of your responsibilities as far as being basically a recommending body to them on the array of land use.
So if Councilperson LeBouvier and Councilperson Turner still want to meet, I'm happy to do that. Mr. LeBouvier expressed a concern regarding that letter not being accurate because we may not have fully understood what their intentions were with respect to that proposed ordinance, I believe it was.
Well, and I would leave it to the commission to decide whether or not
Understood.
there's a need to meet.
So I'll find the latest draft of that on this. I'll circulate it one more time with you guys, and then it just reply and let me know. Even if you don't have a comment, just reply and say I don't have a comment, so I'm not thinking you didn't get it or something like that. So yeah, thanks for everybody for following up on that. Forgotten all about that. It's 2 months ago.
A lot going on.
All right. Anything more from anybody tonight?
Nope.
All right, then I'm going to adjourn the meeting and thank Jeannie and all the other council persons for attending tonight. Thank you, guys. Stay safe.
Thank you very much.
Take care, Steve.
Take care, bud.
Heather, wherever you are.
All of you.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Steve.
Bye.